Cowboy Bebop, the live action adaptation. We're not reviewing the original anime series at this point. There's plenty written about it,
Yeah.
and
Myriad
plenty people.
video essays on YouTube, should
Yes,
you wish to dive in. A lot of people love Cowboy Bebop.
yeah, and I think rightfully so. This is something you turned me on to just recently, and we talked anime a little bit more recently on the pod.
Yeah,
And
usually films that come up.
And so when you mentioned that they were doing a live action adaptation and you wanted to talk about it, I was like, oh, I'll get back into the old series, check it out. It's all on Netflix right now.
Mm.
And I was really just blown away by it. I think my limited experience with anime kind of had me expecting it to be a little bit more like, I don't know, like toned up in a sense and just kind of
Right.
like out there. But this was I mean, the mix of like Western noir
Yeah.
together just like really blew me away. And I liked how it had like an overarching story it was telling while also basically being like bottle episode after bottle episode and just like, kind of like adventure of the week type stuff. And it's really hard to not just like really start to love all the characters in that show. Um, so I thought it was great. The original. Well, tell me why you love the original so much, though.
Yeah, the original Cowboy Bebop from 1998. I actually obviously saw it way later in life as an adult, but it's my favorite anime of all time. And just, yeah, basically those reasons you're saying. It's kind of a common appeal. It's also very simple, but it's just amazing execution, impeccable world building, such a strong, commanding sense of style. It's just really fucking cool, dude. Like, you
Yeah,
can't fake that shit. And on top of that, like that vibe, that cool vibe is so consistent. Spike Spiegel, your lead character, just an iconic anime character, one of the best anime characters of all time, just oozes coolness, right? Just oozes charisma. And on top of that, like you said, it's 26 episodes, but it's not serialized in the slightest. There is maybe like 4 or 5 key, in quotes, plot development episodes or regarding Spike and Vicious, but for the most part it's like you said, just these journeys. These in other animes they would be called filler episodes, but it's not filler in Bebop's case because it's always coloring in your characterization of our characters, of the crew of the Bebop. And I just it's just so lovable. It's so easy to revisit that world building of like a future of our solar system, right? It's just so great, so cool. And I think me visiting it like later in life was really cool too because it was something I had like heard of, I had known about for years and years, but like I think as most people know, anime was just not the most accessible thing in the 2000s in the West. The way it became in the 2010s, like you said, Bebop is now on Netflix. Previously, it had been on Funimation, but like when I first heard of Bebop, it was not that easy to watch unless you knew someone with the DVDs, in the pre-streaming era. So to get to the point now where it's being adapted by Netflix, and meanwhile the original is so easy to see, obviously is a welcome change. Uh, but yeah, I love the original, and I was willing to give, I think, willing to give Netflix a chance with the live action adaptation. And not that the track record of adapting anime is strong, it is anything but when it comes to making live action anime. Uh, think about how many directors have tried to make an Akira movie and they haven't even gotten, to the starting line, right? Uh, Dragon Ball Evolution film from 12 years ago. There's tons of examples of bad anime adaptations in live action. But just because I love Bebop so much, just seeing a new spin or a new twist on it, I was just eager to see how it, came to be, what it ended up being.
yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that uh, hooked me about the live action adaptation is that it had some pretty interesting lead actors. John Cho who we've seen in a lot of things. I think probably came up with Harold and Kumar, but has been in so much since then, and just I think an
He's on a
actor
good
we
run
really
right
like.
now, Searching,
Yeah,
Columbus, etc.
yeah, Searching, one that we both really liked. Mustafa Shakir,
Yeah.
who most notably from The Deuce recently. Really enjoy his character, and Daniela Pineda, who not someone I was super familiar with, but have obviously seen some things. She was in Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, so she's on the come up. So these three really interested me. Um, how did you feel about them being cast as like the main three from the original crew?
Yeah. It's a good question. So I'd say generally, I like all three of them in the parts. I think clearly Mustafa Shakir is the star of the three. Like his jet is amazing. Honestly, like
Hmm.
it feels so true to the character. He has such
Yeah.
great presence. His line readings are great. I thought he's a total slam dunk piece of casting. Notably, of course, switching the race here. Kind of funny. The character is, of course, called Jet Black, and now he's actually played
Hmm.
by a black man. That's funny. But I thought he was awesome. Really, the whole time. And I think I liked Pineda's energy as Faye. I think the script does some changes some things about Faye, but I think
Yep.
she's pretty good. And Cho also, again, the script kind of changes some stuff, right? He's a lot more sarcastic in the live action adaptation, like more bluntly, like jokey as like a response to people talking to him and stuff. I think Cho handles that pretty well. I think that the probably biggest issue, it's not even a Cho issue. I think it's just a live action issue. Is if you remember how like Spike would like fight people and stuff, right, with those really like high kicks and stuff. It's just some anime ass shit, man. It's really hard to translate anime action to live action.
Yep.
You know, I'm not saying it's John Cho's fault. It's just like, I mean, unless you would cast like one of the guys from the raid or something and just made this more like John Wick in terms of action. If you weren't going to do that, I don't really know how you could have got that across. But Cho definitely has like the presence and the energy you expect from like bebop thematically, right? These feelings of loneliness and ennui and
Mhm.
longing and all of that. That's still present in the performances, which I like.
Yeah, I think they all were really solid. It's funny you mentioned like the high kick thing because they really do it in like the cold open of the first episode where he like throws the bullet up and kicks it into the guy's head or whatever, and then
Yeah.
like they don't ever go back to that move again. So like here you go, and then we're never gonna touch this again. I think just like a hard, like you mentioned, a hard thing to adapt. But no, I really loved all of them. I would say I agree. I think Jet Black, played by Mustafa Shakir, is probably my favorite performance in the whole thing. Um, just brings such like a gravitas to that role, and especially like teetering the line between his being a father and his care for his child, while also having lost faith in the police system and just kind of like society in general, and trying to like toe that line of like optimism and hope for his daughter's future while also feeling so shitty about
Right.
the rest of the world. Just really, I thought did that great. I'm thinking about the scene where he's like watching her dance recital while Spike is like fighting all the bad guys in the background, or all the guys trying to kill them in the background. Just really well done.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I, Faye, you mentioned that they changed some things in this, and I was wondering how you felt about those changes.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you're going to change a lot of things when you're adapting something, and I welcome the change. I don't want a carbon copy remake. There's really no point of doing that. So if you're boiling down a 26 episode anime series at 20 minutes pop to an 8 episode series that's like 40 minutes pop, obviously you're going to change things. So a lot of things are condensed, right? We meet Faye in episode 1 instead of episode 3. The Syndicate stuff rears its head right away. Uh, but also, I think the characterization of Faye is just slightly a little tweaked. I think part of it's just the script. Like, she comes off as more of a troll this time around, whereas in the anime, she was just kind of like lazy and at times like a little incompetent. But it all makes sense once you learn about her past and her lack of knowledge about her past, right?
Yep.
I feel like they kind of shortchanged her a little bit in the writing department for the Netflix adaptation. On the other hand, I like how they, she's not as overtly sexualized now as she
Mhm.
was in the anime. That is a positive trait. Um, and I still like the performance. I still like the energy, but I think a lot of times the script kind of uh, lets her down. And I think that generally, like that's my biggest criticism of the adaptation is the script, because the show is now very, very serialized. And unfortunately, what that means is there's just a lot of Vicious and Julia, a lot of Syndicate stuff.
Mhm.
Vicious is not a big presence in the anime.
No.
Pops up here and there in relation to Spike, but now he just has all this backstory that I don't think really amounts to much. Right? We don't need all this build up to him taking over the syndicate. That's basically our first introduction to him in the anime. He's already taken over the syndicate, with the coup and all that. So I just didn't feel like that change was executed well enough to be that kind of change. Um, I mean, even Jet having a daughter, which is completely brand new. I wish it added a little bit more to it. Honestly, like, it comes up in the plot, but like I wish this adaptation had a little less plot, because that was one of the
Mhm.
best things about the anime.
The hangs,
Yeah,
you know? I still think it's a pretty fun hang. I did like seeing how they would pull in elements of certain episodes.
right.
Um, obviously I think the first episode of Cowboy Bebop, where it's like that pure Western feel with the red eye and stuff,
Yeah.
is just like unassailably amazing episode of television, and so it makes sense they would want to put you back there in some way. And I think most of the first episode, if I'm remembering correctly, you kind of are there. Um,
Mhm.
uh, there's definitely some changes to it, but I I loved when like things like that would pop up when you're back in certain episodes or callbacks to certain moments. They had
Right.
the nature terrorists or environmental terrorists
Yes.
pop
Mhm.
back up in
The Echo
different ways,
terrorists.
stuff like that. Yes, there you go. Did Were there any specific like adaptations like that or callbacks to the old episodes that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, and in episode 2, I liked how you got the Mushroom Samba guy popping back up in a really completely different role. I like the references to the Jupiter Jazz duo episodes, which was nice. Uh, yeah, I like the Red Eye nod as well, as you mentioned, the first episode anyway. They changed that a lot. 'Cause I like that casino setup in
Yep.
the beginning on that like space casino. I love the shot when the coins are like falling on their face due to the gravity being messed up. Right. Uh, that's all nice. I thought the our first introduction to our first connection with Spike and Vicious, where we have the reference to the Fallen Angels episode, where we had the iconic, gun meets sword pose that we see. Don't know if that quite have a candle to how it's done in the anime, but overall, like I think the show is commendable for a lot of its like tonal shifts, especially when you remove it from the anime. Like if you try and not compare it to the anime, or if you're someone who doesn't even know what the anime is, I feel like you like it a lot more, which I think does speak to something, right? There's definitely like really
Right.
good bones here, and I thought the script was a little tighter. Like some of the dialogue was pinched up, right, and some of the um, narrative was uh, toned down a bit. And I think you'd really have something. So it's really funny to see kind of a really wide range of response to this, right? There are people that think it's kind of impressive, and then there are anime fans who are just really displeased. And I'm not one of those as an anime fan. I definitely still have, you know, some issues in quotes. Not like I'm offended or anything. Like obviously, like Ed is a character that's barely present at all in live action. Ed's also kind of barely present in the anime too, but more present. So that's a
Mhm.
change. It's I think one of my disappointments in Netflix more than anything is the production design. I think is really uneven. There's a lot of like scenes set outside where those exteriors look just really cheap and clearly like on a backlot,
Mhm.
and that's not what I want from a world so expansive and
Fast.
inviting as Cowboy Bebop is an anime form. That's disappointment. This is disappointing, especially
Yeah.
given the Netflix budget this should have. So that's annoying.
I think your criticisms are really valid, and I think I agree with your take that spending so much time with Vicious and Julia didn't really serve it too well. Like I'm thinking back to like the last two episodes of the series, right? And episode 9 is completely like plot catching you up on the relationship between Spike and Vicious, and it really just takes you away from the original three, Jet, Spike, and Faye, which is kind of who I just like hanging with the most on this show, and that's kind of where I want to spend the most time for sure. Um, and yeah, I mean, you still get some of the, being cowboys, going to get bounties, that sort of thing, but it's very much like a side part of the show, and I did kind of miss that element. Um, at least episode to episode. Also, gotta say, not nearly enough Ein for me. We needed way more Ein to really, I think, pull the show together. But it sounds like, or at least it seemed like they were really setting it up for a season two. Um, would you want to see a second season of this?
Yeah, I think season 2 actually is even more appealing because we can just leave even more callbacks to the anime behind and try and do or like
Seriously.
obvious, like if we can like lose like all some of that plot and just nod to more of the one-off episodes from the anime, that would be really appealing to me.
Yeah.
Getting Ed in there more frequently as well. So yeah, I say why not? Go for it.
I mean, I hope we get a second season. I thought it was really solid. Definitely not a perfect show, but I think a lot to like here. And I think if you know it's related to anime or not, give it a watch, at least a couple episodes. I think you'll find something to enjoy with it.